Hey everybody, welcome back. Just as you've guessed, today we're doing another upgrade video. Today, a Wharfedale Evo 4.1 model. And I've had some mixed feelings about some of the Wharfedale models that have come in. Some of them I felt like had really good bones. There were things there to work with. Nice little tweeter, nice little woofer, easy to work with drivers. For not a lot of money, we've turned some of those into some really high-end speakers. And it was a really worthwhile upgrade. And we've had the top model that they make. That's the Alyssa something. It's 10 or 11, $12,000 a pair, something like that. Crossover sent in, and we've just replicated the crossover with better parts because the parts quality, even on their top model, was kind of fair at best, fair to poor. And this one is no exception. They build these things for nothing, and I know this is probably the smallest in their line that uses this tweeter. And there's probably a lot of people looking at this model thinking, "Ooh, yeah, it's got the AMT tweeter," as if the AMT tweeter is going to make it a whole lot better. But there are issues with the AMT tweeters, and this one is no exception. A lot of times, what I see is right behind the diaphragm, they'll just put a steel backplate with no airspace behind it at all, no damping, no nothing, and it tends to make the response shoot out there fairly flat and then just fall like a rock because it's really loading the diaphragm. If it had a deep back cup on it or something with some airspace behind it where the diaphragm is unloaded, or if it had an open back completely, you'd see a much more gradual roll off. It'd play down a little lower. It wouldn't be such a loaded diaphragm. This one is no exception, exactly the same like that, and it just won't play down very low. I like the little grills that are on this model. They're held on magnetically. I always like the magnetically held on grills. Once you remove it, it's a nice clean look. The cabinet did have a brace running through it. It's got what looks like some nice binding posts on the back with these huge heavy metal clips stuck on the back. Like, this is what you want your signal to pass through. And yes, there were some steel parts in the binding post. They put lock washers on it, or washers on the back side or on the inside that were steel. It's like, oh, you were so close. The rest was probably all done in brass. And so yeah, it wasn't too bad of a little speaker. It's like, okay, I've got something to work with here, sorta, but there's some limitations. One of the things I don't like is the port. Let me spin this back around. The port runs right down the middle of the speaker, and it exits out the bottom, and then there's this bottom plate that's screwed on, and just a slot on each side for the air to pass through for the port. So in one regard, that's good that you could cram these right up against a wall and you're not changing the way the port's loaded. It's loaded the way it's going to be loaded no matter where you put it. But it also takes up a lot of real estate right in the center of this box, especially considering it's got kind of a flare on it. So there's no room in the bottom of this box to mount anything. And this little crossover was mounted on right in front of the binding post, and the screws that you have to get to, you could barely reach because the port went right down in the front of it. So you could just get a screwdriver past it on each side to remove the screws. And of course, yes, the parts are a little on the cheesy side. I mean, not completely cheesy, but yeah, pretty cheesy. I mean, all the little resistors are all sandcast resistors, real small wattage rated. There's an electrolytic cap there in the part of the circuit, probably in a notch filter. There is some polyester film caps, and then this may be a poly cap. I didn't look, but it may be one poly cap on the tweeter circuit. So, and the PVC coated wire. I think the negative on each one is tinned copper instead of pure copper. So, did they spend any money on the crossover? No, they did not. And did they spend much on really anything on it? No, they did not. It's a very inexpensively made speaker. There is a little bit here to work with. So there is an opportunity here to take these things up quite a bit. The thing that kind of holds me back on being completely excited about this one is that AMT tweeter. The tweeter just won't play down very low, and that really holds back everything about it, and it makes me have to use a little higher order filter on it to get the bottom end out of it, because there's kind of a knee right there at the lower end of its range, and the woofer's having to reach way up there, and I'm kind of having to force it flat and then pull the top end out of it in order to reach all the way up there to where that tweeter is. So not completely enthusiastic about the whole design, but the level at which there is of improvement, like from where it is to where it goes with the upgrade, is a lot. Just the parts quality alone and fixing some of the response issues really turns this thing around quite a bit. So let's take a look at the measured responses and let's see what I'm talking about. Let's start with the on-axis frequency response on this thing. As you can see, not particularly linear. It's like, man, guys, why didn't you focus on the crossover design just a little bit more and give this thing a balanced response? Like, ugh. And let's look at it with the individual woofer and tweeter responses. And you can see the crossing over point is just below 3,000 hertz. And you can see that it's playing a little on top of each other above the crossover point. It's causing that humped up area there, which is going to be a little bit of a source of brightness to it, because anything in that area, 2,000 to 4,000, when you have a hump in that range, it's going to add a lot of brightness. Looking at the horizontal off-axis, you can see drops off pretty evenly across the board, but since it's humped up there in the on-axis, the off-axis is also kind of humped up there, so you're getting the same response all the way across no matter where you go. You're getting a little peak there where there wasn't one, or where there already was one, I should say, and it didn't go away. Vertical off-axis, it's not bad. The drivers are staying in phase pretty well. The problem is the crossover point is so high that those wavelengths become very short. So it doesn't take much of a change in time alignment to cause a pretty big phase rotation. So we're seeing a little bit of a dropout in the vertical off-axis. Considering how high it's crossed, though, that's not that bad. And then looking at the impedance curves here, the impedance drops down to 3.9 ohms. So keep in mind, it's a 4 ohm speaker, and it tuned to about 52 hertz. So it may play a little lower than you'd think with this little woofer that it's got. And then looking at the spectral decay, you can see there's a couple of areas there of ringing. I hate that. There's just, man, it was tough to get away from that ringing too. Also, let's look at the individual driver responses. Let's look at the woofer's response and the tweeter's response independently. You can see the woofer has a pretty humped up response from about 800 to 1400 or 1500 hertz. There's just a lump there where you're losing the baffle step loss, and then it's causing a little bit of a hump and it drops down. And then there's a big bunch of ringing at the top of the range that's out of the band of the woofer you can even use. And then the tweeter, it's rolling off a little early. Like it's not wanting to have a linear response. It's wanting to dive. And then down there at the bottom, after it's dove down there, then you see a big knee come up. So it's like, oh man, and that's a lot of ringing right there. That's primarily by the fact that they just put a flat plate right behind the diaphragm and they did nothing behind it to add any rear chamber, to damp that diaphragm, or nothing. So some of that ringing is probably just right off of that plate. With and without the grill, you can see that the grill did not affect the response negatively too much. So it's definitely one that's tough to work with. The tweeter not going down low at all really restricts it to that frequency range where I had to cross it. So let's look at what I did with the new crossover that I designed for it, which oddly enough used about the same number of parts as the original crossover, because I had to do some forcing and controlling of the response within the band of each of these drivers. So they crossed a little lower. We're around 2750, 2800 hertz. And that's as low as that tweeter's going to go. It just physically won't go any lower. But as you can see, I made a nice smooth response out of it. Why they didn't do that originally, I don't know. I don't know what the engineers were thinking when they design all this crap and they just don't produce a nice linear response. It wasn't that hard. And then, of course, parts quality is going to go up a lot. So let's look at some comparisons here. Let's look at the original frequency response and the new frequency response. You can see how much smoother the response is now. And then let's look at the horizontal off-axis the way it was before and the horizontal off-axis now. You can see it drops off more linearly in each direction. And then especially if we look at the vertical off-axis, let's look at the original vertical off-axis and the new vertical off-axis, and you can see that it stays in phase now over a wider range. That's because the type of crossover that I used, that order of filter, kept it in phase a little more linearly over a wider range. Whereas the other one really kept it in phase over a range that was tilted down a little more, whereas now they're in phase over a range that's tilted up a little bit more. So a little more consistent, should have a more balanced room response. The impedance is slightly lower than it was, and I couldn't help it. There's a notch filter in there on that woofer circuit that's flattening out that woofer's response, and it was necessary. I couldn't get around it, and the impedance dropped down. Well, I didn't have an. Oh, yeah, it is. Dropped down to 3.1 ohms, so a good 3/4 of an ohm lower to gain that linearity. Also, if you look at the spectral decay, I went back and forth with this thing several times working with the network, trying to get that ringing out of it. And because those drivers have to play in that range, it was almost impossible to get that ringing out. But as you can see, if you look at the before and after, I was able to knock it down a little bit. And those are the things that can be very audible when you see some ringing like that and you see a trace come way out there. That's going to be very excessive noise that where the driver's continuing to play even though the signal has stopped. So in this case, I helped it a little bit. So we'll put together a little upgrade package for this thing, and there's going to be a couple options for you guys. And I'm going to tell you right now, to mount the new crossover into this box is going to be really challenging. You can do it, but you're going to have to get creative. You're going to have to put some of it on the left wall, some of it on the right wall. Tweeter filter on one side, woofer filter on the other side, and it will fit, but it's going to be hard to screw it to the walls because that port goes right down the middle. You may try to take the base off of it and see if you can remove the port. If you can get the port to pull out, pop it out of there. It's probably just glued in. Pop that thing out, get your crossover mounted in there, and then slide that thing back up to the middle. It'll make it 10 times easier to work on. Now, if you don't want to go through that, if you just want to go the easy route, here's what you can do. Sorry, man, I just keep feeling like I've got a yawn today. Knock these cheesy binding posts out of there and put 2 sets of tube connectors on there, and then just mount the crossover externally, and then put 1 set of tube connectors on the input of the crossover. Just run the wires coming off the crossover, put the tube connector ends on so you can plug it right in. If you do it externally, you got nothing to worry about. It's easy. You got plenty of room. Then you can mount it on any board as big as you want, and you can have it externally right there where it's exposed, and you can jack with it if you want to. Go back and try different caps. You got a lot of flexibility when that thing is exposed and right on the back of the speaker. I don't know why I still keep trying to yawn. But when you do that, it's going to require 2 more sets of tube connectors. So you're going to spend another $100 on tube connectors to mount the crossover externally. And I would recommend using tube connectors, especially when you're mounting something externally like that, because now you've got a lot of connections in the signal path. And anytime you've got connections in the signal path and those connections become really cheesy connections, that adds up. You got not just 1, but 2, but 3 cheesy connections. It's like, okay, you're really disrupting the signal transfer. So it becomes very important to use good quality connectors like the tube connectors. And they're the easiest connectors there are to install. And they just always sound better. So that's it in a nutshell for this little upgrade for this whole Evo 4.1. If you guys want to send me any of these bigger models. I've been asked about them before. I'll be glad to take a look at it, but you have to send one to me so I can measure and test it. Oh my goodness. Ugh, I'm not sleepy, but I did just eat lunch. Maybe I do need a nap. I wish I could take a nap. These are busy times, let me tell you. I got to shoot another video after this one. It's a clips video. Go figure. So yeah, that's it on this one. I appreciate you guys watching the videos. Thanks for sticking with me even through all the me trying to keep from yawning. And I'll see you guys in the next video.